Sul, hello, and labas. Here we are, out in the woods, following around this hooded and masked stranger. Or is he? Obviously, he's not. We can see his face down here, but I thought maybe it would be nice to do something dramatic. But, yep, here's Vilkas. He is currently out on the run. He's hiking towards his camping site. Where he's going to try and hide out to avoid being detected. And he has totally done a runner split from his family, is not planning on, making it back, as it were, anytime soon. As we know, last year, Lancaster said that Vilkas was due to marry into the Evanson family, and Vilkas, as we know, didn't really have any plans for that, didn't really want to get married. I mean, he's not even 18 yet. He's going to turn 18 this year, but he isn't 18 yet. So he is currently making a break for freedom. This kind of follows along. He was really close with his grandfather. His grandfather, when they were younger, would tell him all kinds of stories. And he's making a break for freedom for the land that his grandfather told him about. So when Vilkas was growing up, he was really close with his grandfather, and his grandfather would tell him all of these stories about the land that he had come from. Now, his grandfather had only come over to England when he was quite a young boy. His great-grandparents brought over the grandfather because their home was facing a lot of conflict and they wanted to have a quieter life. And they'd heard from traders in the area that England was relatively peaceful and it was a good place to go to. So they kind of ended up there. But his grandfather, having been just like a small child at the time when they came over, he remembers all of these tales, He remembers that they were surrounded by all of these really strong, really cool warriors who were respected even by their enemies, and that the land was beautiful and rich, and that there was opportunity. And of course, his grandfather was only a child. I think that's sort of the memory that he has, is of it being sort of like a beautiful place. And he shared that memory down with his grandson, especially because the grandfather was quite a bit of a dreamer. And I think that it's safe to say, as he gets up from cloud gazing on his own, that Vilkas is also quite a big dreamer. They both, kind of like dream big dreams and have big ideas and big thoughts. Vilkas is out here trying to make a run for freedom. In my mind, their grandfather is the one who actually got them into serfdom, because the grandfather was a big dreamer. He wasn't a very good planner. And when he was grown, after their great-grandparents had passed on, he just hadn't planned for a particularly tough winter. And he did what a lot of people would have done then. He would have looked at his family's faces, his children's faces. Like Vilkas the older would have been a child then. And he saw that they were facing starvation, that they were in really bad shape. And so he went to his local feudal lord and said, we'll be serfs if you can help us through. And that's kind of how they ended up in that position. So their grandfather was a dreamer who was not very realistic, who got them into serfdom and who's made some mistakes. But in Vilkas's eyes, he was super close with his grandfather, and he doesn't really see any of the negatives. He only sees the positives. So he's out here making a break, and we'll see if he's going to be successful or not, because it's not always the easiest thing becoming freed if you're a serf. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and look at the ways that in my challenge you can get freed. So this is a draft of the amended rules that I'm playing with, because I know some people have asked for that. This is a pretty long document. It's 28 pages, pretty chill. A lot of things are just like full on taken from Morbid Gamer because they are exactly the same. But I figured if you had one 28-page document and then also I think hers is like 14 pages for the 1300s, I don't think you'd want to have two. So I kind of tried to fold them both in and then just give credit wherever things are exactly what she said. But I've amended sort of the harvesting a little bit based off of research that I did about what would have been accessible in the 1300s. For example, garlic is, I believe, I know there are conflicting reports, but by 1300, I've seen it in multiple places that garlic was a staple in even peasant gardens, and that in fact it was something that was kind of seen as a peasant food because the nobles thought that it stank and they didn't want anything to do with it. And then of course there's like a bunch of different dowry stuff, but the thing that's like really important for us, and a few new events in the 1300s that happened in England, sort of to look at it. This isn't like working out perfectly, this document, because some of the things when you click on them, they don't hyperlink correctly, so it's probably going to change a bit, but this is where it is right now. So, and the way that I'm playing this, goal number 1 is to escape serfdom, as we know, which Vilkas is currently trying to do. And at the time, there were a few different ways that you could get out of being a serf. One is, of course, a quit rent where you buy your way out. However, this is like kind of complicated because lords didn't really want to part with serfs since they got so much out of them financially as well as in terms of a workforce. And so buying your freedom was really expensive. And in addition, serfs didn't technically own anything that they had. So they don't own their own money, and they would have to give all of their money to a third party to then negotiate on their behalf for this. The point is that serfs didn't own their own things, so they had to get other people to negotiate on their behalf. Otherwise, a lord could feasibly say, this is my money, it's not your money, so I don't know why you're trying to buy your freedom with my money, even if they were the ones who owned it. Also, as time went on, more people wanted to be free, and the lords needed more money for wars, especially around the War of the Roses. I think this becomes a pretty big factor, and so lords became much more agreeable as time went on to letting people buy their way out. Option 2, of course, is to run away. That's what we're doing right now, so that's escape. And to escape, you would get on the road in the challenge. You get on the road and spend a day on it, and at nighttime, you're going to flip a coin. Heads means you've been caught. Tails means that you've been successful. If you get caught, then you have to spend the year in prison as punishment. So that's the consequence. If you get caught a third time, then they just execute you because they're like, you're causing more trouble than you're worth. This is based on the idea that there was an expression at the time that town air sets men free, or what I've also seen referred to as the myth that town air makes free. And this is the idea that if you could escape to a town or anywhere for a period of a year and a day as a medieval serf, then you could you were considered free at that point. I imagine that it's probably more because the Lord stopped sending people to hunt you, because the downside about running away is that the Lords would send people to try and track you down, to try and bring you back, and you would be punished for trying to escape because that had just cost them money, energy, time, stress, whatever you want to say. So the positive side of running away is that towns, of course, are growing quite substantially at this point in time. And so a lot of the time the towns wanted people to come and join them so that they could help develop the trade, they could develop their own services, they would have people to buy the things that they were producing. It was beneficial for a town to have more people, essentially, to bolster the commerce of the city. And so a lot of the time townspeople would go out of their way to help sort of like hide or give tips to the serfs who were on their way, or fugitives, I guess you could call them, to try and help them evade capture. knowing that if they could stay and if they were supported in some ways, then they would probably end up staying in that town and helping it to grow and become more successful. So we can assume that some people are out there to help, some people are just going to ignore the situation, and the Lord is sending people after Vilkas. Now, currently the rules are to do a coin flip, but that might change. So I feel like I'd originally done a coin flip because it was like so dramatic, and I thought, ooh. But I don't know that it would really be that high of a likelihood that you'd get caught, because one sim day is 3 months, of course. So he could have made it a lot of different places in the course of 3 months. Even if you successfully evade capture for that first day, that doesn't mean that you're out of the woods yet, because there is another roll on the next sim day to see if you've been successful a second time. Of course, these weren't the only ways. Man, look at this weather. This isn't the only way that you could get out. You could also take holy orders. And the reason this would help you get out of being a serf is that the clergy is exempt from ordinary rules. So you can become free that way. But the complicating factor about this is that for a serf to be able to take holy orders, they have to have the Lord's permission to be able to even enter into the beginning of that process. And also it costs money. So most serfs, like we have already established, didn't have that much money. And you also needed the Lord's permission. Let's get a nice dramatic shot out. Oh my gosh, Vilkas. So, you know, that's kind of a coin flip. Would he give you that permission or would he not? Option 4, which was possible but really uncommon according to historians, is that if you had excellent military service, you might have been able to win your freedom that way. The example given is from Shakespeare's Henry V, but most things that I've heard or read or seen essentially say this probably wasn't very likely. And if I had to guess about why, I would say 1 is that the nobles were the ones being trained in military service, so they were obviously the ones being more successful. They had better equipment. Serfs, I assume, were used something. I'm not a war historian and haven't really looked at wars because it's not really my passion, but I assume that serfs were kind of used as cannon fodder and sent to sort of like, face the toughest tasks. So I don't think it would have been like terribly common for a serf to have like won their freedom that way. We will do his roll later because we'll do it around midnight, but for now we're gonna go and check in on the main household. Okay, so as you can see, well, maybe you can't see because this is kind of a bizarre view, but these trees are all here because, as we know with this lot, or if you play in Henford on Bagley, you might know that at this lot, this side of the property, there's like cars at a parking lot. So I have hidden them with trees, which of course makes this a really beautiful view from overhead. But this is our new holding. So it says we're the property owners, but in my head, it's just because we're trying to make sure that, like, the Earl has assigned us the role of fixing up all of the property is kind of a punishment. And we can see that the other family who live on the other building on this holding are, in fact, the Evansons, our mortal enemies, and sometimes lovers. You know, it's a complicated relationship these guys have. Okay, so here we are back with the main Payne family. You'll notice that there are obviously some changes. Our living quarters is quite a bit more cramped than it was, and we now have a new member of the family. So we saw in the little cutscene at the beginning that Darius, when he went to tell the Earl what had happened, the Earl and he had an argument, then they shook hands, and then he ended up marrying this individual. Now I've heard her name pronounced many different ways, so I'm just going to call her Sif because that's easiest. But Sif is the daughter of the Evansons that Vilkas was supposed to marry. Of course, as we know, he did not. So she's quite a bit younger than Darius. She just became a young adult, and he's only got 16 days left. So she is quite a bit younger than him. But she's already considered a caregiver to these children. And what else? She's doing her best to sort of like hang out with these kids, get them going. But we are going to get to know her just a little bit. So Sif is an interesting character. She is creative and she is family oriented through random generation. She also is lazy through random generation. So that's, fun. And then after the first generation, tend to randomly generate their aspiration. And I guess she is a self-care specialist. So I don't think she's going to be finding much happiness with that. I just want to be really honest about it because we don't have spas. But yeah, Sif is lazy, which I haven't seen any evidence of this yet. She's been doing totally fine. We can also see that our money is a little bit better than it was. That's because Vilkas had 9,500 in his piggy bank. So he only took 5,000 as well as his bow that he won. And that's kind of why we have a lot more money. Well, I guess while they're doing that, before we show around the property, we can see quite a few things. For example, this is Darius, of course, from Sif's perspective. And we can see, we know all of his traits, blah, blah, blah. We know he's a stay-at-home dad and that he's our spouse. But he is basic looking. And if we look at their relationship, they have pretty low, they're acquaintances with no romantic interaction at all. So that's, quite something. He knows all of her traits and he thinks she's attractive in a spouse. And they do have good compatibility. So that's something. But I mean, that's about as far as that's gone. Okay, so like we were saying, this is our new little home. It's a lot squishier. Everyone's in each other's space a lot more. So if you've eaten, good job. And I've noticed some weird animations around the toilet. So I don't know if anybody else is having those, let me know. But I think it's because it can't tell if it's a chamber pot or a toilet. Hopefully some modders will affect that shortly. But as we know, the Earl was not very happy with Darius when Darius came and said, listen, my brother is missing. And so he was like, well, your brother's missing. We made an agreement and you will be marrying into the Evanson family. Like, we just can't allow this to happen. Sorry, they're going to do their duty and consummate their relationship. We'll give them some privacy once I make sure that they're actually doing it. Yep, of course they are, because they know that that's their job. But other than that, what else? We have our little outdoorsy area. Our lake is or pond is over here rather than where it was before. This is the Evansons holding, as we know, for around, we can't see into it. I added this hopscotch thing, even though it doesn't look time appropriate, because I feel like they could have done hopscotch. But most interestingly is our new farming plot, which is absolutely massive. If this were to be filled up with bugs and weeds, like, I mean, on our old one, which had, I want to say, half, if that, of these plants, it took us a full day when it had weeds and bugs. Yeah, I shudder to think how long it's going to take to do farming, and that's actually very time period appropriate because people would have worked together to sort of farm together. It would have been required so that everyone could survive. So that idea that the group has to work together, that's going to be a lot more important going forward. And luckily the Evansons are right next door. I guess I didn't realize that Darius hadn't met Sindri. We'll have to meet him and Evan Bengtson, and then they'll become part of our farming group. I'm also thinking that the Earl, put them all into this holding together because he's saying, you've had so much conflict. and you are going to live together until it's sorted. So they're now our neighbors, and we are going to have to deal with them and see how that goes. We will go ahead and roll for him now, I think. As we know, the first one doesn't count. I'm going to change it so that the rule is from a D4, so long as you don't roll a 1, then you evade capture. So you have a 1 in 4 chance. Okay, so he rolled a 2 and has evaded capture, and tomorrow he will have another roll to deal with. And if anybody just saw that, Sif in the background has gone and puked, and I think we all know what that means. So go ahead and use that elbow grease. Let's hope that she's gonna, I don't know, you know, it's scary. Now, another thing is that today is actually Harvest Day, which I almost forgot. So, our friend, our heir, our main guy, go ahead and harvest all of this, bud. Today's our Harvest Day. Oh yeah, and also I did some research about flowers that they would have had access to at the time, and so I've added in a few flowers that seem time period appropriate. I've replaced some that would have been there but that we don't have in the game, so that we can sort of like imitate that idea. Oh, are you watering or are you stealing? Because I really wanted these things. Another bizarre thing that happened from, oh my gosh, everything's falling apart. Another bizarre thing that happened from moving Vilkas out is that, so another bizarre thing that happened is that all of the things that we had for sale, like our mead bottles, are suddenly no longer considered ours. I think that's because they were out at the time that I made the whole place a residential rental, and they were in a shared space. I don't know if that's true or not, but they were ours. We know they were ours. We were going to sell them. So what we will do is sell those from the inventory once we've calculated our taxes, because we're harvesting today. It's going to be a big harvest. We have a lot of stuff in our inventory, and I am positive that it's going to be a lot of taxes. So especially once we sell that stuff. And so we're just going to go ahead and do that when we get to it. Now, you know that I said that we were going to have the Evansons help us with our sort of like gardening and stuff. But the reason why they're not doing that today is because I don't want them to harvest on the one day that we get to harvest. Because they can harvest other times, like it won't matter that much, but it does matter today if they end up taking all of our harvestables and we need them. Poor lady, she's married into this family. She has this much relationship with her husband. She has these 3 kids she now has to look after, as well as all of these responsibilities. Her family is like quite big. I wonder if they still, yeah. So she has got 2 brothers. Of course, we know Sindri. He was supposed to marry Dovile, and we know Summerled because he and Darius are soulmated. And then Summerled also has 3 children. Evan Jr., like Evan the Second, Catrion, and Eileen, because their mother was supposed to be of Celtic descent, but she died, and for some reason he's forgotten all about her, but luckily her children haven't. So I don't know, the family relationships have been a little bit weird. But yeah, his wife died from neighborhood stories without me saying so. But another thing that happened is that our good buddy Sawyer died. When, and I don't know how, and I don't know why, but like it just happened. I went into their family because I had to help, it was Dagmar was pregnant, so I had to go and help her with the old birth giving. And Sawyer had like passed away. I was like, what? Apparently he tried to eat cereal and it exploded. I don't even know what pack that's from, you know? I don't. I think Sif is quite cute. She does seem really young to me though, like in her face and her sort of traits, I guess. She does seem like quite young to me. Tomorrow is Gree and Esmond's birthday, so hopefully everything will be fine. But I am terrified of that. I was thinking about it, and I can't believe in hindsight that both Dovile and Selby passed away. Like, they both had the least likely, statistically, the least likely chance of being the ones who didn't make it. And yet somehow they were the ones who, like, lost out on that whole situation. And we've also got a ton of harvestables, so I'm going to do some quick calculations as we go through, and we will see what our finances are looking like at the end. So that means that we've got currently 17,000 simoleons. Wow, we're doing so good. And hopefully there's nothing terrible coming right around the corner. Darius, what you doing, bud? Going to eat? And we're gonna sell off some of this trash that's in here. And, yep, get everybody going. It's 5:41, so I guess after that we will... Oh, we'll go ahead and roll for our bud Vilkas. We have got so much money at this point in this household. We've got, ooh. So we're gonna get these guys going to bed. But while they're doing that, we're gonna roll for our buddy and see what's the deal. Okay, first one never counts. So for Vilkas, to see if he's gonna survive. Yes! All he had to do was avoid getting a 1, and he has avoided it. He's home free. He's a free man, and he is going to make an escape for the land that his grandfather told him about. We won't see him again, essentially, for another year. So in the second half of 1307. But that's okay. We know that he's safe, he's not imprisoned, and that's all that we're going to know for now, except for maybe we'll see a few things about what he's been up to as we go, but that's neither here nor there. Poor Darius. So he is much older than his wife, and what I mean by that is that he feels, I think, very responsible to everyone here, and so I think that that's something that he's going to struggle with, is if his wife, his new wife, Sif, even though he's not, you know, friends with her, doesn't particularly like her, and this is just an arranged marriage that they have been told, you know, this is what you're supposed to do. I think that he's still going to really struggle with just being like, oh, you're on your own. Good luck to you for figuring it out, you know? Especially since she's taking care of all of his kids, and he loves his kids so much. But I don't think that she will ever take the place of Selby. Oh, yep, she's expecting. So yeah, officially Sif is with child, as is, according to the church at the time, her duty. And so the new family is getting sorted, doing what they're supposed to do, following the rules, and hopefully staying out of trouble with the Earl, who now has some anger towards them. Oh, if you are so inclined and you want to upload any Sims for our Let's Play, then please feel free to use the hashtag PlumbobsDecades, and then we can add your Sims in. So we'll leave this part here. If you like what you've seen, subscribe, and please do comment about what your take on all of this is. What you think about Vilkas running off, what you think about Sif, what you think about Darius's solemn acceptance of the world around him. See you all in the next one. Bye bye.